Almost every relocation buyer starts by researching Minneapolis. A surprising number eventually buys in St. Paul instead. At first, that sounds backwards. You search the Twin Cities online and Minneapolis usually gets the spotlight. The name is bigger, most relocation videos mention it first, search results push it higher. Downtown photos make it feel like the obvious choice. Then buyers actually start comparing homes, neighborhood, traffic, price, and daily life. Suddenly, St. Paul starts making a lot more sense. Once people stop asking which city is more famous and start asking where would I actually enjoy living, the entire decision changes. That is exactly what we're going to be breaking down today. Why do so many buyers start in Minneapolis then end up taking St. Paul seriously? More importantly, should you be looking at St. Paul sooner than you probably are? Before we get into it, ask yourself one question. Are you trying to live in the center of everything, or do you want access to everything without feeling like your life is consistently moving at full speed? That answer matters more than the city's name or your search bar. Why does Minneapolis get all the attention first? Minneapolis usually wins the first impression. People recognize the name, out-of-state buyers search it before they understand the full metro. Online, it feels like a main event. A lot of relocation buyers type moving to Minneapolis before they ever search moving to St. Paul. That makes sense. Minneapolis has the bigger skylines, more national recognition, more entertainment buzz, and a stronger pull for people who want the active city feel. You see restaurants, lakes, sports, events, downtown views, and walkable pockets. For someone relocating, that creates instant curiosity. The problem is curiosity can turn into assumptions. A buyer starts thinking, if I'm moving to the Twin Cities, I should probably live in Minneapolis. That might be true, that might not be. Your best fit depends on how you actually live, not which city shows up first online. This is where the search starts changing. A buyer comes in focused on Minneapolis, they tour a few homes, they compare monthly payments, their commute questions get more specific, weekend routines start mattering, space, parking, noise, layout, and neighborhood feels become real. At that point, St. Paul stops looking like the backup option. It starts looking like the option they should have considered earlier. The first shift is the price starts feeling different. The first thing that changes for a lot of buyers is the money conversation. Not just the purchase price, monthly comfort, that distinction matters. A home can technically fit your approval range while it's still creating a payment that makes your life feel tight. When a buyer compares Minneapolis and St. Paul, they often start noticing that similar budgets can create different opportunities depending on the neighborhood, home condition, and property type. For some Minneapolis areas, you may be paying premium for activity, access, and name recognition. Over in St. Paul, that same buyer may find a home that feels more comfortable for the way they actually want to live. Maybe the layout feels better, or perhaps the city feels calmer. A different property gives them more breathing room. Sometimes the home itself feels like a compromise. That's when buyers start saying things like, wait, why weren't we looking here from the beginning? Now, this does not mean St. Paul is always cheaper. Every neighborhood is different. Certain parts of St. Paul can be very competitive. Homes with strong location, character, and condition still move. The point is not that one city is automatically a deal and the other is overpriced. A better way to think about it is this: St. Paul may give certain buyers a different balance of cost, comfort, and daily lifestyle. For first-time home buyers, the balance can matter more than chasing the city they originally searched. The second shift is St. Paul feels more livable to certain buyers. Here's where St. Paul gets underestimated. It does not always sell itself instantly online. Photos may not create the same immediate pull as Minneapolis. Search results do not always capture the rhythm of living there. Yet once buyers spend time in St. Paul, something clicks. The city feels more residential. Neighborhoods often feel established. Daily life can feel calmer without feeling disconnected. The combination matters for people who want city access but do not necessarily want high-speed environments every day. You can still get to restaurants, parks, local businesses, coffee shops, historic homes, and interesting neighborhoods. At the same time, many pockets of St. Paul feel more grounded. Less frantic, more routine friendly. That's the piece relocation buyers often miss from a distance. They assume the choices between city life and suburban life. St. Paul creates a third lane. You are still in the cities. Your environment may feel more neighborhood driven than downtown driven. For buyers who work from home, want a quieter routine, or simply prefer a settled atmosphere, that can be a huge advantage. Minneapolis might still be a better fit for someone who wants more movement around them. St. Paul often wins with people who want access without the consistent intensity. Those are not the same lifestyles. Here is where I want you to be honest with yourself. When you picture your life in the Twin Cities, are you drawn to energy, walkability, and activities around you? Or does the calmer neighborhood with easier routines sound better? Drop Minneapolis or St. Paul in the comments based on where you think you would feel more at home. Most buyers have a gut reaction when they stop thinking about the map and start thinking about their actual day. The third shift is buyers realize living close to Minneapolis may be enough. This is a big one. A lot of buyers start by thinking they need to live in Minneapolis. After they break down their real routine, they realize they only need access to Minneapolis. That difference changes everything. Maybe you want to go to an event sometimes. Maybe certain restaurants matter to you. A job, friends, entertainment, or activities might pull you towards Minneapolis occasionally. But if you're not going into those areas every day, living directly inside that energy may not be necessary. For some buyers, St. Paul gives them the better daily base. They can still get around the metro. Minneapolis is still accessible. Their home life feels more aligned with what they actually want. That is why the "I want Minneapolis" conversation often turns into "I want to be near Minneapolis, but I do not need to live right in the middle of it." Once buyers make that mental shift, St. Paul becomes a serious contender. This matters even more for first-time home buyers. Your first home is not just about excitement. A good first home should make your daily life feel manageable. If the payment, commute, parking, noise, or layout creates stress every week, the fun part fades away quickly. St. Paul can offer a version of the city living that feels easier for certain buyers to sustain. The fourth shift is neighborhood character starts mattering more than hype. At the beginning, a lot of buyers chase the idea of the cities. Later, they start caring about the feeling of the neighborhood. That is where St. Paul becomes interesting. It has a very different personality from Minneapolis. There is more historic character in many areas. Streets can feel more established. Local pockets often have a slower, more lived-in rhythm. For buyers who want charm without feeling they're in a constant rush, that can be very appealing. A home search also feels different once you start thinking about your weekly routine. Where will you get groceries? How does the street feel when you pull in after work? Can you picture your mornings there? Would weekends feel convenient or annoying? Those questions seem simple, but they reveal a lot. Plenty of buyers start with big picture preference. Eventually, the smaller daily details decide the purchase. That's why St. Paul wins people over. Not always because it looks flashier, often because it feels easier to picture a normal life there. The fifth shift is traffic and routine changes the decision. Traffic is not the most exciting thing to talk about. It is absolutely one of the things that affect how happy you are after moving. A location can look perfect online and still frustrate you every single week. Maybe the commute is longer than expected, parking becomes annoying, errands take more time than you thought. Your favorite areas are not as easy to reach as they seem on the map. That is why comparing Minneapolis and St. Paul needs to be beyond the house. You need to think through the pattern of your life. Where do you work? How often do you need to be in Minneapolis? Will you drive most places? Are you expecting walkability? Do you want quieter evenings? Is the weekend access more important than the weekday proximity? Questions like that create better decisions than simply searching the most popular city first. St. Paul can make sense when your routine benefits from a calmer base. Minneapolis may still be better when you truly want activity built into your everyday environment. Neither answer is wrong. The mistake is choosing before you understand your own rhythm. The sixth shift is first-time buyers start prioritizing peace of mind. First-time buyers often come in with a dream version of the process. Then reality starts adding pressure. Rates matter, monthly payments matter, inspection concerns matter, resale questions show up, neighborhoods fit becomes more serious. Suddenly, the most exciting option is not always the most comfortable one. Many buyers begin prioritizing peace of mind. That is where St. Paul can become more attractive. If a buyer finds a home that feels manageable, an area that feels grounded, with a lifestyle they can actually maintain, that combination has real value. A house should not make you feel like you are stretching every part of your life to own it. For relocation buyers, the emotional side is even bigger. You are not only buying a property, you are trying to land somewhere unfamiliar and feel steady. That's why the surprise St. Paul buyer is so common. They did not move away from Minneapolis because Minneapolis was bad, their priorities became more clear. Once that happened, St. Paul fit the life they wanted better. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Minneapolis often attracts buyers first because it feels more visible, active, and recognizable. St. Paul keeps winning buyers later because it feels more livable, calmer, and easier to settle into. That does not mean St. Paul is better. It means St. Paul deserves more attention than many relocation buyers give it at the beginning. If you want more restaurants, bigger city energy, stronger nightlife, and more active environment around you, Minneapolis may be a better fit. For buyers who want neighborhood character, daily calm, city access, and more grounded pace, St. Paul might surprise you. The important part is not picking the city with the louder reputation. Choose a place that matches your real life. A beautiful home in the wrong rhythm will not feel right for long. A less obvious area that fits your daily routine can become the best decision you make. Before you decide between Minneapolis and St. Paul, do not start with listings. Start with your week. Map out where you will actually spend time. Think about your commute, errands, social life, work setup, and how often you want to be around activity. Be honest about whether you like energy or only like the idea of it. Some people love being close to everything. Others want the options to access it, then come home to something quieter. The difference matters. Once you understand that, the home search becomes much easier. You stop chasing every listing that looks good. Instead, you narrow in on an area that supports your actual life. That is when buyers make better decisions. So, if you start your search in Minneapolis, but St. Paul keeps showing up in conversation, do not ignore that. There may be a reason. The price, the house option, the neighborhood feel, and the day-to-day routine might line up better than you expected. Plenty of relocation buyers begin with Minneapolis because of the obvious search. A lot of them end up seriously considering St. Paul once they understand what living in the Twin Cities actually feels like. If you are comparing both cities and trying to figure out which one fits your budget, lifestyle, and a long-term plan, feel free to reach out. That is exactly the kind of decision I help buyers work through. And if you want more Twin City breakdown that go beyond the surface, make sure you subscribe. I will keep covering Minneapolis, St. Paul, relocation strategies, first-time homebuyer tips, and what actually feels like to live here before you actually make the move.